Yeah, and now she has a birthday coming up this week on the 15th. So I'm gonna take her out tomorrow. Um uh it's gonna be a surprise.
We're live on
Oh, we live?
uh just
Oh,
turn live.
okay.
Bear with me. I saw. Oh, wait. Did we get back to this Zoom and turn on the mic? Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Peace to the God.
Peace to the universe. It's been a minute, brother. I apologize once again for my technical difficulties. I couldn't even get on the air for like the last 30 days, dealing with my phone and phone carrier. What's going on, brother?
Maintaining, bro. Getting ready for my youngest to graduate high school.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. So she's well, in fact, today was actually the last day for seniors. So she's graduating. We're preparing for graduation. Here. She's having prom send off. It's I don't know when that started, bro. But anyway, now they do something called prom prom send off. So it's a big deal. Um,
Yes, sir.
it's a big deal. So she's doing that next week, and then I think the week after or so we're doing graduation celebration. So
Mm.
so this weekend has been, well, this month has been full of adventure.
Wow, that's amazing. Um, is she like standoffish?
I was just saying, host is not in the meeting. Hello?
Hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah. Once you exit Zoom, it automatically mutes your mic. I was saying, is she standoffish? Because I know once the girls of the family get a certain age, they think you're embarrassing them just by being in their presence or mentioning them.
No, man. Heck no. My daughter's not standing up at all. She's
You're not embarrassing it. Somebody
no,
get your dad.
no, bro. I mean, not at all. My daughter is actually, I mean, she just no, it's not like that at all. In fact, I mean, she's kind of like my son. I mean, they're both always like,
Hmm.
hey, meet my dad. You gotta meet my dad. You gotta meet my dad.
Wow,
Yeah. So
that's
it's
great.
yeah, it's always if it's somebody that's interested in her, like a guy or something like that,
Mm.
it's like, well, you can't date me unless you meet my dad. You know,
Amen, brother. Amen.
and
You trained them well.
my son is the same way. If if there's a girl that he's serious about, it's like, okay, you gotta meet my
Mm.
dad. You know,
Wow. You've had a positive impact on their lives.
I hope so, bro. I hope so.
That's awesome, brother.
So,
Um, I'm gonna play the quick disclaimer, but in the meantime, um, so she graduates. She's going to college, or she's doing
mhm.
something else.
Bro, I don't offer those options around my house.
Failure is not an option.
Yeah, You know,
We
why?
will be assimilated, like they say in Star Trek.
Yeah, we don't choose failure when success is free.
Not in this house. So go ahead,
No.
black man. I
Mm.
hope the audience out there is listening. Um, I think I needed a parenting class 101 because I didn't set those boundaries. Hmm. I think you're listening to Black Mental Health and Race. I am your host, MF Doug. My co-host is Dr. Moore. I'm gonna play this disclaimer right quick, brother, and then we'll get into a quick discussion and let the people know where we were. Uh, wish the audience a happy Mother's Day, although, as you reminded me, Mother's Day is every day, brother. And that was a good point to make. Um, hold on. Hold on. Let me play this disclaimer. Disclaimer, warning, the content will examine phenomena that some would find offensive, inappropriate, insensitive and triggering. This content neither suggests nor implies medical or any other professional advice. This is a light-hearted discussion of a comedian and his therapist friend engaged in hypothetical conversation on Black mental health and race. In no way are the following views and content associated or affiliated with this or any other platform that this podcast may be accessed. All information and opinion are independent expression of free speech that a reasonable person may freely consider adapting or opposing in their own paradigm. Yes, brother. Disclaimer. Why not give an acknowledgement to the universe that we are back and that we have a Mother's Day. You know, my mother passed away on Mother's Day. I thought that was fitting. It was apropos to the dedication she had to us, me and my siblings, as a mother. And I think she was a great mother, a great motivator, and someone well-rounded in Black history. And growing up, she taught us everything that we needed to know to get an upper hand on Black experience and Black awareness. And I am thankful to her for that. I told you she was always into voter registration from the time she left Cheraw, South Carolina. And she was affiliated with Shirley Chisholm here in New York City in voter registration drives. I guess that's where my first introduction to Black consciousness came from. It wasn't like the Al Sharptons of the world, but it was for her era and her time, an experience that she tried to pass on to us, instill in us as boys. I think I was the only one that really took a liking to Black awareness and Black experiences out of the family. And I am grateful that she broadened my horizons that way.
You should probably do some do a little research on Albert Adler and his philosophy on birth order. You know,
His
as
philosophy on what?
Birth order.
Birth order.
Yeah.
Explain.
So, well, I mean, I'm not going to go into extreme detail, but you can look into it, and then you tell me kind of what you think, because you're the middle child. So
right.
according I can't remember all of it, but
Hmm.
there's a difference between like the first child, the middle child, and the youngest child, right? And
Hmm.
kind of how they kind of their personalities are really really different in terms of the first child, the middle child, and the youngest child. And I think Adler kind of talks about the middle child kind of struggles the most in terms of trying to find their identity because they're in the middle between the oldest and the youngest. So there's uh, this I don't want to say the word challenge, but there's kind of like a struggle for that middle child to find their identity. So I will look more into it because it's I can't remember all the details off the top of my head, but he specializes in birth order. So it'll be interesting, I think, for you to look into what Atlas said about birth order, and then we can kind of come back, and then I will expound on it based on what you read about it, and I'll kind of give you my philosophy of what Adler meant by that middle child in terms of birth order. And again, is this his philosophy? You know, everybody has philosophies. Freud, Adler, Jung, Erickson, um, on and on. Everybody had, but he specialized in birth order. So, it'd be interesting. Just hearing you say that and hearing you say that you feel like you kind of picked up or picked out that about your mom. Um,
Hmm.
to me, it just kind of speaks to. Um, it's interesting how, in a household where there could be a mom and dad and there's kids, but everybody in the house has a different experience. You know,
Mm.
and and and
Indeed.
and while there's the same mom and dad, all the kids have these different personalities, and you kind of wonder
Right.
how that happens. But Adler kind of talks about that. I think probably more than most philosophers. Specifically in terms of birth order.
Wow. It's interesting that you said that because I do struggle with identity as a middle child and exactly who I wanted to be and how do I fit into the world. Also, what you said about him having a philosophy and me trying to have a philosophy was another point that hit home to me that you're just describing. I definitely have to look this person up and get back to you with some feedback on it.
Yeah, because what's interesting about it is it even see what Adler does um, that I really like once I got into psychology and all those things is that what he said, and again, is his philosophy about it, right? Um,
Right.
but the great thing about education and the higher levels of education, so let's say you graduate from high school, you go and you get your bachelor's degree, right? Your bachelor's degree um, really doesn't challenge much. You really kind of are going to follow um, what's already documented. You're really
Hmm.
gonna just follow what um, the history books, whatever the research that's there. You're pretty much gonna follow that. It doesn't teach a bachelor's degree doesn't really teach you to challenge the status quo, right? But when you
Right.
start to get into higher levels of education, higher level of disciplines, like your master's degree and your doctoral degree, then you start
Hmm.
to then education really starts to kick in terms of teaching you to challenge the status quo. So now, when you get to your master's degree and your doctoral degree, your master's degree and your doctoral degree is, it now starts to challenge what you've learned, in your high school and your bachelor's level of education, right? So it's going to say,
Wow.
well, I know you learned this, but how is this so? Right? And now it's going to say, so for example, like if you decide to get a doctoral degree, right? The first
Mm-hmm.
the first thing that's going to happen in that doctoral class is it's going to ask you, what's your hypothesis, right? What's what's
Mm.
your what's your belief about X, Y, and Z, right? And so whatever it is, so well, for example, for me, because I'm in psychology, so I'm
Right.
now going to challenge the data that's out there about a particular thing, right?
Mm.
So they're gonna say, okay, um, it's gonna be very general in the beginning, and then you're gonna have to narrow it down. So let's say
Mm.
they're gonna ask you, so what do you question, right? Um, that's already written, that's already documented. So I'm like, wow, okay, I'm a black man. I believe if you're poor, that being poor creates a mental illness. Boom. Okay, that's
Wow.
fine, right? That's fine. That you believe that. If that's what you believe, that's. But now here we are, on this doctoral level. It's great you have that thought process. You believe that. Now prove it, right?
Mm.
So because we already have data that says X, Y, Z. So you're gonna look at all the data that's out there that says blah 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 blah. And you're going to challenge what you're saying, but not only are you going to challenge what you're saying, you're going to prove what you're saying. And if what you're saying is bullshit, then your research is going to show that what you think is bullshit, right?
Wow.
And so that's the difference in like the different levels of education, right? So in terms of, because like when you graduate from high school and you just go and get a bachelor's degree, that's fine, right? But you still don't really know shit, because all you got is introduced to something. So you got introduced
Right.
to a higher level of math, to a higher level of psychology, to a higher level of English, you know, um, than what you had in high school. So you just learned a little bit more, right? But now, if you go to the master's level and the doctoral level, that's gonna say, okay, so you've read Plato's blah blah blah, or you read Aristotle blah blah blah. But now, what did Aristotle mean when he said blah blah blah? What did Plato mean when he said this? What did
Mm.
Socrates mean when he said this? Right? And now you start to understand. Now you start to be able to put things in perspective. So now you begin to understand that, wow, you know, now I'm understanding. So like on a master's level, I began to understand the order, right? So
Mm.
Socrates came first, and then Plato came second, and then Aristotle came last, right? And each one of them were building on what the first one already built, what the first one already said,
Mm.
right? And so I don't want to go too far off, but anyway, I'm just
No,
saying.
this it's very interesting because it's right along the lines of the subject that I wanted to talk about. In fact, it's right in the middle of your doctoral degree and us questioning our belief system. So continue.
No, so essentially what I was just saying, I was just talking, when you just triggered something in my head when you started talking about your mom and Mother's Day, and your mom, and her role in terms of Black history, and what you picked up as opposed to your other two brothers. And then it just dawned on me that you were the middle child. And so my mind immediately went back to my to my teachings, right, in terms of
Mm-hmm.
psychology. And so I immediately thought about birth order and what that meant for the middle child as it related to you and your other brothers and why you may have picked up something as opposed to them, right? Because it has so much to do with so much, even in the way that you might date, right, unconsciously,
Right.
right?
Right.
So what happens a lot of times, in our chemistry and dating people, we don't understand that we are attracted to certain personalities just because of our birth order, right? So for
Mm.
me, for example, like, I'm my mom's first child, right? But
Mm-hmm.
my wife is our only child, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
our only child will kind of function like a first child, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so there will be personality um acquaintances or personality traits that will automatically be attractive, not consciously but unconsciously. Because I don't, when I meet her, I don't know that she's a single child or a first child, but there will just
Right.
be personality traits that first children have, and only children have, or first children and another first child, right? Same way with younger children and another younger child, right? And how they might, when they meet, personality wise, why they might be attracted to one another or why not, right? But
Right.
again, that's, I mean, that's not something the average person knows or thinks about. But I'm just saying it as it relates to this conversation.
Indeed. I think that's why one of the things that we try to promote on this podcast, listening to Black Mental Health and Race, is the notion that education is so important, especially beyond the high school level or the post-secondary level of education, because a lot of us never get to manifest who we want to be because we're clueless on our position in the world, our position in our families, our position in the job market, our careers, and our position in what we believe and what we stand for. So it is very important, and I'm so glad that you brought it up, because my subject for next week, and I'll give the audience a little homework, like Howard Stern had said, he always asks people, what's their philosophy? What do you believe? And like you just said, with your professors at the graduate level, they want to know what you believe so that you can challenge it.
Yeah, yeah. So So if I go back to what I was telling you about Adler, so Adler's birth order theory suggests um, that the order in which a child is born in a family can influence the personality and development, right? So what he theorized was firstborns tend to be responsible and kind of take on a teaching role, right? And then he said, the lastborns tend to be more outgoing, socially, and intelligent. They're just, they're more outgoing, right? While the
Mm-hmm.
middle child, he says, the middle child tends to struggle the most to find their place,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Wow. And that's certainly true of me. Um, I think Mike was the most outgoing, and Johnny, which would reverse the order, but the premise still holds true. Um, Johnny was more of the he just went in his own direction.
What I can definitely say about Johnny that I remember, particularly in my
Hmm.
personal relationship with him,
Yes,
and
sir.
that aligns with what Atlas says. You know, Johnny was
Mm.
definitely um, very sociable
Mm.
in the way that I remember him, right? Because
Yes,
when
sir.
I'm sorry,
Yes, sir.
right? Because like I remember, I didn't meet Johnny initially. Um,
Mm.
our mutual friend Eric met Johnny, and he said, "Man, you got to meet this cat Johnny." But he didn't call him
Shout out
Johnny.
to Eric.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Eric. Um,
Wow,
uh,
he passed?
yeah, he passed away. Yeah, he passed away a couple years ago. Man,
You talking about
didn't
Eric the twin?
no, Eric Wilson.
Oh, okay.
No.
Continue.
Yeah, but I remember him saying, "Man, you gotta meet this cat Johnny." Well, he didn't call him Johnny. Eric had given Johnny a new name, and he called him Slash. He said "Man, you gotta meet this cat Slash." And I was like, who the freak is Slash? And so he called him Slash because I don't know what happened in their interaction, but Johnny had showed Eric this walk where he would lean down when he walked and he would wave like his right hand, right? But and him waving his
I
right hand,
remember that war.
the right hand would just slash back and forth, right? And so he called him. He was like, "Man, you gotta meet Slash." And so I remember when I met Johnny, you know, I was just calling him Slash. I was, what's up, Slash? And he would do this, and he would just do that walk, and it was just the funniest. It was just the funniest thing.
I remember that shit. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And so from that, like we became so close. Like I'm, like as close as he and Eric had become was as close as we all three had become, right? And so,
Yes, sir.
um, at, and then he just and because we were so close, when I started that polo team, I
Mm-hmm.
immediately there were some people that I said, well, they have to get initiated into, and then there were
Mm-hmm.
other people who were just um, naturally incorporated into that organization. And Johnny was one of those people who was one to initiate one of the initial people that came along when I created it. He was a part of the
Mm-hmm.
creation.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
that's amazing, brother.
I don't
And
even I don't even know if I ever shared that part of that story with you.
nope, you sure didn't. It just made me crack up laughing too.
Yeah,
Because I remember that walk he used to do.
yeah, yeah.
We used to practice being hard, and but we were joking about it mostly. But the types of walk we used to do, the way we wear our hats slanted to the side, all the shit that all of the big gangsters taught us growing up, the big homies taught us growing up, but we
Mm-hmm.
would make fun of it on how to be hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So I was saying that to say that my memory of him, in terms of being sociable, it just fits right into um, what Adler talked about in terms of birth order, and you know, uh, in terms of kids, in terms of what order that and what personality kind of developed naturally, um, according to him. And so, hearing you say what you said just sparked something in my, you know, my psychology brain, based on what I know about um, you being the middle child and
Yes, sir.
And then what I know about, both of your brothers. I definitely remember Mike, definitely, kind of being more, again, based on what I know, my limited knowledge, Mike definitely kind of being the more senior in charge, you know, um, uh, you know, I don't know how goal directed he was, but in terms of
Hmm.
personality, he definitely showed up. You know, I, you
Right.
know, big in terms of personality, and so you kind of saw him like, I didn't see him looking for leadership, right? I just kind of
Right.
saw him as, showing up, um,
Right.
as I know where I'm going,
The
I know what
big
I'm looking
brother.
for, right?
Right.
Right. He definitely
In
showed up
fact,
like that.
it's funny that you mentioned that because Mike was the only one out of the three of us that graduated from high school. He actually completed and got his high school diploma.
Wait a minute.
But me and
You,
Johnny dropped out.
Wait a minute. Johnny didn't graduate?
Nope.
Are you sure?
Did he graduate?
Man,
I don't think so.
I think he did, bro.
Did he graduate? Maybe
I
you
think
know better than I do because
I
you was
I
with him.
I think he did graduate. I'm not 100%, but I think he did. Now I'm not 100%. I will have to go back and look. But
He
I
may
don't know.
have. I gotta
I don't.
ask my sister soon.
Yeah.
Maybe she remembers.
Yeah. I don't. I'm not 100%. I'm not 100%. Now that we're talking about it, I thought he did, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But
Um,
I
I
confirm
gotta
that.
ask my sister if she does she remember. Um, for some reason, I don't remember him graduating.
Hmm.
But Mike, even though he went to automotive. If you're from New York City, you know that automotive was a high school that's dedicated. We had specialty high schools here in New York City, and it probably did in other states. But our specialty high schools in New York City were one high school dedicated to that type of trade or that type of vocation. And one such high school was named Automotive. It's in the title of the high school, Automotive High School. Like I went to the High School of Art and Design in Manhattan, but my brothers both. Well, Johnny never made it to high school, but that's probably why I don't remember him graduating. Maybe he did graduate. Here in New York City, he got arrested. Johnny did, and that's why he went down south to live at 14 years old. So he went to high school in Chiroa. Me and Mike went to high school in New York City. Now, Mike got kicked out of, to show you how the streets were so powerful to us here in New York City as impressionable youth. Um, he got kicked out of automotive, and I just stopped going to high school of art design, mainly because I couldn't see. I lost my eyesight at the early age of 16 for the first time. I would lose it again at 21, I think. And then recently I had cataract, so I lost my sight. This will be the third time I lost my sight. But my point was I stopped going to the High School of Art and Design because they wanted to put me in a blind school. I'm like, this is not my education path. I wanted to be an architect. Now those dreams are shattered because I can't see. And they wanted me to learn Braille and walk with that white cane. I refuse to this day to walk with that damn white cane. No matter, I've been blind, totally blind, 3 times. It's a miracle that I even get my sight back. But the point I was making was that Johnny went to high school in Chiroa, and he used to tell me about the adventures y'all used to have, and just walking down the hallway of the high school. We didn't have high schools like that. Y'all had these huge high schools in other states. But New York City is so small that you have to have specialty high schools, and that's what you call it. Like Clara Barton was the nursing school. If you wanted to be a nurse, that was the high school you went to. The Bronx School of Science, if you wanted to be a scientist. Those were the specialty high schools, and then you had something like Boys and Girls High. You didn't have no direction. You were probably going to be arrested. And so everybody that was bad went to their local high school. In Brooklyn, it was Boys and Girls High School. And so when you get thrown out of the specialty schools, those were the people that were going towards a directed career. And my brother Mike studied automotive, but he got kicked out of there. But he got his high school diploma going to Eastern District High School, and that was one of the schools you went to that were local, like Boys and Girls High. But I don't want to bore you with that. But my point was that Mike, from what I know, was the only one that got a high school diploma. I have a GED. 2 years after I dropped out of high school, I took the GED and passed it on the first try. And then went on to college. Mike and Johnny never went on to college.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, Dr. Moore.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But Mike did show the fortitude to stay in high school and get that high school degree.
Interesting. I was having a conversation with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was having a conversation with someone else, but but I was talking to my daughter about college and what she wanted to study. And earlier, when school first started, she said, "Well, depending on how high school goes," she said if high school is easy, that she would get her uh she would get her real estate license while in high school, and
Wow.
then she would go into business administration if she was able to get a real estate license while in high school. And she said if that didn't happen, then she would go into psychology. And so I was having a conversation with her the other day when I picked her up from her her modeling and dance um, class, and I was asking
Right.
her what was she thinking about studying, and she was saying, possibly psychology. And so I was saying to her, well, psychology on a bachelor level is very easy. You you know you could probably do very well in that. The problem is you're not going to be able to do anything with that outside of that. And so
Right.
that means you would have to know that you're going to have to go to grad school. And she
Yeah.
said, and so she said, yeah, it's a lot of schooling. And I said to her then, and I repeated it tonight to her. I said, it's interesting people's perspective about, a lot of school. I said a lot of school is nothing compared to a lot of work, right? And I said that because I said to her, you can look at, going and getting a advanced degree outside of your bachelor's, meaning your master's or your doctoral degree, and you can look at that as a lot of school, right? But if you compare that to the rest of your life of working, it's nothing, right? Because you got the rest of your life to work. So rushing to get out of school so that you can get a job is almost asinine or foolish to me if all you're doing is hurrying up to go to work. Because you're gonna work for the rest of your life. That is going to
Right.
always be there. And so if you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
man, I'm tired of school, I'm ready to go to work. Well, you can go to work, but if all you're going to do is just go to work, you that's all you're going to get is just a job and work. And so
Mm-hmm.
you're what people have done, in my opinion, they have adopted this ideology about, man, school, all that schooling
Worth it.
is BS. You know, I'm ready to get out of school. I'm ready to, go to work. Well, here's the reality. You're gonna go to work, right? But what type of work are you going to be doing? Right?
Hmm.
So now you have decided I'm not gonna go to college, or if you go to college, I'm only gonna do 4 years and then I'm gonna go to work. Well, okay, you decide you ain't going to college, you're gonna go to work, right? So go to work. What kind of work are you gonna do though? Right? Because you don't have no
Hmm.
skill set. So you're gonna go get a job, which is gonna be just a job, right? And when you get that job, now you're gonna be phasing out, right? Of being in your mom's house and your dad's house, right? Or your parents' house, because now you're getting older. And now you want to do stuff that you can't do in your parents' house. So now you got to get your own house, right? So now you got a job, and now you're gonna go out and you're gonna get your own place. Well, now you got to pay rent, right? Because now you can't afford to buy a place because you just jumped out of high school and now you got a job. So you don't have enough money to buy a house, so you got to rent, right? So now you're gonna pay rent, but you also gotta get to work. So you're gonna need transportation. So you're gonna buy a car or you're gonna use the subway or the train, right? So that's more money, right? But now but the job that you have is limited because you only have limited skills, right? So you're only making limited amount of money, right? So now you got rent and you got transportation, whether it's a car or the bus or the train or all three, right? Now you want to date, right? So
Hmm.
let's factor that in. And now I ain't even included food, and clothing, right? But you got a limited
Yeah.
job, so you got limited money, right? So now, you know, you gotta act and date and eat and live your wage, right? So depending on where you live, now you ain't got no education really, because you just got a high school diploma. So maybe you making 30, if you're lucky, $40,000 a year. Maybe,
Lucky.
right? Maybe. And you ain't got no kid. But God forbid you dating,
Hmm.
so now you make a kid. Now
Hmm.
you was already poor, now you super poor. Because now you got a kid,
Hmm.
right? Now you got all those responsibilities and you ain't got no education, right?
Hmm.
And but you got the same job. But now you got more responsibilities, right? So so I'm just telling, I'm just trying to paint a picture for people that talk about not having an education, right? So now you say, so now you decide you're gonna go to college, you know, or the pros and cons of not having advanced education, right? I rather you take your time, think about the major that you want to major in, think about um, what kind of money you're gonna make or can make with that degree, right? And then leave school and leave your parents home in a position to do something for yourself that's feasible and logical. I married a woman, right?
Hmm.
That ain't ever rented in her life. She left.
Wow.
She when she left college and left her parents' house, she bought a home.
Hmm.
She ain't ever rent. And I say to her, see, you know, what you don't understand is the philosophy of called having a leg up, right? Having a leg up is you had a parent that was able to send you to college, right? Go to college, come home, get a job, right? Save your money because you ain't got to pay rent or mortgage or anything. And you leave that house after college in about a year or two and buy your own. Not only do you buy your own, but the family house you left when your parents die, they leave that to you. Now you got two houses. But not only do you have two houses, but you also got a job that has a the leg up is you got a job and two homes plus a job that's allowing you to live above your means. You know, and so I really hate the philosophy of the idea of people shitting on getting an education as opposed
They
to
trivialize going to college.
Right. Or, you know, it's shitting on that and saying, you know, I'm just ready to get a job and go to work. Well, getting a job ain't shit. You know what I'm saying? Getting a job and going to work ain't that ain't nothing, man. Because if all you doing is just going to work, you know, and you making a menial salary, man, you ain't doing nothing.
Nothing.
Because
I can tell you from experience, Dr. Moore, I used to train the people that would be my supervisor. I knew more than them on my job, but they had the degree. And if you don't know anything else about trivializing going to college, you may be more skillful on your job, but you're going to train your bosses, your supervisors, and it's not fun. And that was the one thing that made me say, you know what? All of this hype I believed about not going to college, you make more money, just going straight into work and saving up your money. That is just magical thinking. You don't get better without that education. You don't get better in your personal development or in your career development without that college degree. And it's a shame that we get lulled into this notion that you're going to fare better by going straight into the workforce, or you're going to have an easier time in life if you just go straight to work, because maybe you haven't done good in school, and so you don't see the benefit.
And here's the thing, man. You know, while I'm pro college and all the rest of the stuff, the biggest reason why I think I'm super pro going to college is because I was one of those people that wasn't going to college. I was one of those people that graduated
Right, like
and
me.
didn't have no intentions of going to college. Right.
None.
I graduated. I spent the first 4 years of my life in the world. Right. And I was working and I was hustling. But you know, but and with both of those skill sets, I wasn't making any real money. I was making money at that time, but it was no money that I
If you got
could
a
be
family.
that
Right.
but I ain't had no family. I was by myself. I was single. And I
Mm-hmm.
still was not able to build anything on my own.
Right.
But once I went to college and got an education, it opened so many different doors for me. Whether I chose to go and get advanced degrees or not, the things that I was able to do just with, you know, that college degree, I was able to go in circles and get job opportunities that I would not,
Right.
I could not get without that. And one of the things that you know, you and I got into a big thing about Donald Trump and his presidency and what Black people should or should not be doing. And I was saying, and I was very adamant um, about why I would not ever say black folks shouldn't vote, be a participant in um, voting and things like that. Because I for me, I feel like you know all of the advances that we have and that we have and we've gotten over the years is because have come through the political process. And unless we make it law, then nobody really has to abide by it, right? And we saw that, you know, in Brown versus Board of Education and Plessy versus Ferguson, and all of these, historical landmark cases that have all come through the judiciary system, right? And so I understand the seriousness, and part of me understanding the seriousness of it is because, I was a political science and history major. So in undergrad. And so I began to understand what politics meant, you know, um, you know, uh, you know, after spending 4 years of being in the streets and being in the world. So I know
Mm-hmm.
what that meant. But I'm saying that now to say that Trump has come in this administration, and there are plenty of people that I know that graduated from high school and went straight into the government, right? And so they didn't go to college. And Trump and Doge came in within less than 100 days and turned these people's worlds upside down that had these government
Everybody
jobs
that believed that, right?
that had
Everybody
the,
that believed that going to work instead of college was going to pay off.
and now these people don't know what they're going to do because they are
Mm.
they are force firing these people and forcing these people to retire, and these people don't have any other skill set because all they did was come out of school and they spent the last 15, 20 plus years working in the government, and now the government is saying we don't need y'all. Matter of fact, we're gonna cut the government in half. We're gonna cut the government in half.
And most of these people voted for Trump.
A number of them did, and that's why
the,
I
the
was so
irony,
adamant.
the irony in that is
Right.
is amazing.
And that's why I was so adamant with you about why I felt like it is important to understand who the president will be and what that will mean to you. Because now,
Interesting that you say that because we have a new pope, and I thought he was a black pope, brother. But along the lines of who's in charge, whether it be your siblings, the firstborn, whether it be the president elected through voting process, or whether it be an internal vote amongst a group or network like the papacy, you have somebody new in charge, and yet you are not in charge of your lives.
yep.
So, Dr. Moore, I want you to give the name of the person that you mentioned and is it one book or is it a series of books?
Of who? Who did I mention?
The name of the person that was breaking down the order of the childbirth.
Adler, Alfred Adler.
Alfred Adler.
Yeah.
And was it one particular book, or is it?
It's not necessarily a book. It's his philosophy on birth order.
Gotcha. And I'm going to give one book also as homework. For those of you that come back next week, you're listening to Black Mental Health and Race. We just wanted to come on for half an hour and get your mind tingling. The book that I'm going to recommend is called The Greatest Minds and Ideas of All Time. What a powerful title. It's by a person called Will, Will, Durant, Durant. The name of the title, again, is The Greatest Minds and Ideas of All Time. And what we want to discuss maybe next week or the week after, Dr. Moore, is I still have one edit to do to a podcast we did like 4 weeks ago, and I'm going to put that out maybe this week. And that was talking about the regression, how America wants to go back in order to move forward. They want to go back to a great time in America, make America great again. But that regression is supposed to be progress, including firing people like you had just mentioned, is going to make America great again. So the theme for next week or the week after, it depends on our schedules, is going to be magical thinking. So if you thought growing up in high school was, and people told you, man, ain't no sense in going to another 4 years of a second high school, why don't you just get a job, start working, and start saving up your money? You got people like YouTube influencers and TikTok content creators. They are making serious money, but this is one person. And all of a sudden you think that you are going to make that same money. You think that you're going to make that same money because you got a city job, a federal job that pays more than McDonald's. All of this is the magical thinking between the ages of 16 and 30 that you think are going to work out for you. Tell them how it works out, Dr. Moore.
Well, I don't want to kill anybody's dreams, but
I am.
But you know,
that's why you got me, brother. You're gonna have to stop me because I'm gonna put a knife in him. You're gonna have to stop me, Joe, Dr. Moore, because I want to talk about magical thinking in terms of 3 categories: your sexuality, the magical thinking that you have about your sexuality, the magical thinking that you have about religion and what you believe, and the magical thinking that you have about race or don't have. But continue, Dr. Moore, as we bring this podcast to an end. This is just an introduction until the next podcast.
Yeah. So, you know, if you want to be a YouTuber or streamer or whatever it is, obviously there are people that are making money at that, right?
Serious.
But here's the reality. The reality is, I don't know how much space is out there for those people. You know, that's fine and well. But whether you become a YouTuber or a professional football player, basketball player, streamer, at some point you have to hire an accountant, right? At some point you're going to have to hire somebody who has a college education, right? And the reality is you're going to have less people that are going to become professional basketball players, football players, you know, streamers or whatever. But all of those individual people that become whatever they become, what you can do with your degree is a whole lot more flexible than what those people can do in that one field that they can do, right? If they could just play basketball, they can just play basketball. But after basketball, what? You still got to be able to manage your money.
Which is why most of them end up broke.
Right. So I say, get you something that nobody and nothing can take away from you. That's an education, right? Because if you hurt your knee in football or basketball, or you become unpopular, in streaming or YouTube, or you get canceled, what else can you do?
For having an opinion that nobody likes.
Right.
All
and
of a sudden, all of the money that you've been making is gone just in an instant. Like, look at Kanye West. And to remind people, P. Diddy, a billionaire, is going on trial Monday morning. I will be at the courtroom, or at least standing outside on the first day of trial for Sean P. Diddy Combs. So those people out there that have this magical thinking, Puff, the Magic Dragon, has been on a ride of success for over, 30 years, brother?
yeah,
But I think Kanye's song said they all fall down. Even he could not resist the temptations that will instantly, overnight, take away all of your money. And then you're going to need a lawyer. You're going to need an accountant. You're going to need somebody that's a professional that took the time to go to school in order to help you try to save your money or your freedom.
yeah.
But I wanted to ask you one question before we go, Dr. Moore, because I need your advice. I don't like talking about people's belief systems and making fun of it. But I think we as Black people have some beliefs that are a trap, something that we will never get out of. It's a spiral downward, and it has everything to do with the association with the Pope. It's about religion. Would you want to engage, this is my question to you, would you want to engage in a conversation on religion the next time we come on the podcast?
Sure. Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's
Sure.
what we'll do that next podcast. It may not be this week or next week, but to the audience, if you come back and if you have questions, or if you read up on Arthur Adler,
Alfred Adler.
Alfred Adler, or Will Durant, the book I recommended, and want to come back next week and hear or participate in the discussion on magical thinking and what you think you believe and what's actually going to happen in your life. If you are just graduating high school and you're becoming an adult, everything that you think you believe now may not be true.
Yeah,
But
but
it's a sensitive topic too.
But you can actually add mental health into that, because
Exactly.
what's happening with mental health right now, um, is it's a pro and a con, in my opinion, right? Because while mental health is getting a lot of attention, what I'm finding with a lot of clients, um, and just people in general, is people, um, um, because mental health is a popular thing, and it seems like it's a fad right now. Um, Everybody is jumping on the mental health train, and now, um, you just kind of hear people saying, "Oh, I need to protect my mental health," or and they're using all these taglines, from mental health. Um, I have ADHD, I have depression, my ADHD, my ADD won't let me do this, and it's just it's almost like a flex, right? I'm feeling like you know, people are using these titles, and what's crazy about it, I shouldn't use that term, crazy. What's wild or funny about it is like in us as professionals, we were always taught to be very careful about um, giving people a diagnosis. It's one of the most critical and sensitive things that you can do, as a physician, right? Um, is to give a person a diagnosis, and we will always caution to be careful about which client you would actually tell that they have this actual diagnosis, right? That's not something that, you know, historically, um, physicians or therapists did in the past, or psychiatrists did in the past. They just kind of they would give the diagnosis, in the chart, but it didn't necessarily give the client the diagnosis because what we were historically afraid of is that the client would start to label themselves, right, based on the diagnosis. So we were very careful about giving the client the diagnosis. But now it's a very popular thing, right? So people nowadays are very um, it's almost like a fad or popular thing to say, oh, I have bipolar, I'm schizophrenic, or
Right.
I'm this, and so people walk around labeling themselves these things, which historically was was always a very bad thing. And now when I look at it today, I see why it's a bad thing because it's almost like it's almost like a pass or an excuse to say, well, I can't focus on my homework because I got ADHD, right?
Mm.
I can't do X, Y, and Z because I have this, because I have that. And which is it's almost like weaponizing the diagnosis, right? And it goes against everything about the diagnosis. Well, so anyway, I don't want to get too deep. I was just so I
No,
just brought that
I
up.
get it because what we talk about on the podcast all the time is the work. No matter
Absolutely,
what the diagnosis is, are you going to do the work, the
absolutely,
cognitive behavioral
Ab- ab-
therapy
absolutely,
that is necessary to
absolutely,
address the things that you even say that you have?
right, absolutely, 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 absolutely. Because protecting your mental health, if that's your goal, then you've missed the goal, right?
Hmm.
Because the reality is, whatever the mental health issue is, it is to use it and work and work within it. It is not to use it as a label or a justification for saying why you can't do X, Y, and Z, why you have to separate yourself from the world. The world is not going to accommodate you based on whatever you identify as your mental illness. The world is not going to
Hmm.
change to to succumb to what you say you have. That's problematic in and of itself. And now I just see so much of people running around saying I have this, I have this, I have this, so I can't deal with this person. I can't deal with this person. Oh, my mom, um, my dad had this, had X, Y, Z, and that's why I'm this way. That's that's an excuse.
Hmm. Indeed.
And I'll
I
close. I'll close
yeah,
out
go
by
ahead.
saying, in the words of my grandma, not having is not an excuse for not getting.
Hmm. Now, how deep is that? Not having is not giving.
Not having is not an excuse for not getting.
Wow.
So I don't care that you didn't have a mom. I don't care that you didn't have a dad. That's not an excuse for you not getting right. That's not an excuse for you not being a mom. That's not an excuse for you not being a good dad. You
Good
don't get to
parent.
use that as an excuse for you not doing what you're supposed to do. And my final piece of this is this. However messed up your mom, however messed up your dad was, right? However messed up they were in your life, right? That 14, that 12, 15-year-old person that was jaded by those experiences, that's now your baby, not your mom's baby. That's your baby in you that you have to cultivate. It's no
And
longer
that's a proverbial baby.
is no longer your mom's responsibility, your dad's responsibility. What whatever happened to you during those years of 14, 12, 10, younger, that person is probably sealed within you. Your mom and dad can apologize as much as they want to for how bad they were, right? But that person now is trapped inside of you. And your mom and your dad is not going to be able to fix it. It's your responsibility to fix it. And I know that sounds hard, and I know that sounds challenging, but that is now your responsibility to fix. Because that
And your
hurt
reality.
child, that hurt child now lives within you, and you have to fix it. And I know that sounds like a lot. And that's why it's time for therapy.
Mm. Amen, brother. Before we go, I was going to put a cookie out there in the universe by commenting on the new pope. But I'll give you the first shot at it, or you can decline.
I'm
Senator
going.
from UC,
I'm.
you have the floor.
I am absolutely going to decline because I don't know anything about the new pope.
You remember what Dr. Collins said about the frock? Lift it up and see what's under it.
Oh yeah, well I'm not lifting nothing up. I don't know. I don't know anything about that.
Or mentioning anything. Okay, Malcolm, you were told not to mention it. Here I go. Here I go as Malcolm. I'm going to say something. I think that my opinion, this is just my personal opinion, like Dr. Moore always tells me to be mindful. I think that this is a good thing, if that is what you believe. But next week, we're going to talk about your beliefs and your magical thinking, how it works for you. It works to your advantage, and the occasions when it won't work. And the part of mental health that Dr. Moore can guide you through is when to apply that magical thinking and when to set it aside and put in the work. I think I was kind of respectful of the sensitivity on the issue, Dr. Moore. The title of tonight's introduction is called Magical Thinking as a Historical Survival and Identity. Isn't that interesting, Dr. Moore? We talked about identity, not knowing who you are or the path that you're going to take, and the historical need as a survival way of thinking to believe certain things. I think you had to believe certain things even though you were growing up in the hood, that you could overcome that. That's where magical thinking works in a positive way. But some of you delusional. And that's the other type of magical thinking. And we're going to compare the two.
Well, and so, I like your terminology, magical thinking, but there's something else called self efficacy, and self efficacy is not magical thinking. Just like self esteem. Self esteem is different from self efficacy. Um, and so, and it's different from what you um, call magical thinking. Self efficacy has everything to do with, in spite of your situation, you are going to overcome. And everybody doesn't have self efficacy, but self efficacy is what you need in order to will yourself past whatever your circumstances are in life to get you to the next level. And self efficacy is what I think that I exemplify.
And thus, thrust home. So we're going to talk about, if you have questions about your sexuality, if you have questions about your religion, if you have questions about your race, or if you have questions about your politics, within the next series of podcasts, Dr. Moore and I are not going to give you advice, but we're going to give you the tools to make better choices. I think I said that safely, Dr. Moore, because I don't ever want to change anybody's decision. I don't want to ever take away from anybody's faith or their personal identity. But I want to talk about the reality, because we all live. The one thing that we have in common, no matter what your background and your belief is, we all live in this reality, and we have to get along together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So congratulations to the new Pope, and hopefully it does something for the individual.
Indeed.
And on that note, Dr. Moore, I'm going to let you close out. Take us home, brother.
I thought I did that already. In the words,
no, you yielded the floor. You yielded the floor.
So, in the words of is it Russell Simmons and Martin Lawrence? Peace and
Yes,
good night.
Period.
Yeah, and that's all, folks.
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Peace to the God.
Peace to the universe. Hold on, brother. I'll call you back.
All right.